And let's give it another 30 to 40 seconds for people to sign in and join us. Yep, I see people trickling in. Let's give it another 20 seconds. All right, you have the floor, Ben. Go for it.
Right. Thanks, Sakrit. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Solar United Neighbors Solar and EV Charger Co-op information session. My name is Ben Hoyne. I'm a program associate with Solar United Neighbors. I'm based in Richmond, Virginia. Work exclusively on Virginia. I'm joined by my colleague Sakrit Mishra, who is in Washington, D.C. at our home office, our headquarters. And he works throughout the Mid-Atlantic region and the Atlantic Southeast. Additionally, we're joined by Helen Reinecke-Wilt with Arlington County, one of our longtime partners on this co-op. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Helen to kick us off and say a few words, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the solar presentation. Helen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Reinecke-Wilt with Arlington County. I work on the initiative to rethink energy within the county's Department of Environmental Services and Environmental Management Bureau. We've partnered, this is our 8th year to partner with Solar United Neighbors. They've been an amazing partner. We've installed, before this co-op, 388 systems in the county. And last year we installed 107 in the county and the area. And we're hoping this year to potentially exceed that. So last year we had 325 members. This year we have are so far 358. So we're doing great. We're trying to contribute to the county's carbon neutral goal for 2050 and our community energy plan, which is looking to install 160 megawatts of solar on rooftops in the county by 2050 as well. So every rooftop that goes solar in Arlington helps us meet those carbon neutral goals. And we really appreciate you considering the co-op and your time today. So with that, I will hand it back over to Ben. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Helen. Appreciate you being here. Just a couple of logistical things. I'm having camera issues. So normally I'd be staring this direction and I've got my monitor and big things for so I can see. But that camera's not working, so you're getting my side view. So unfortunately, you're probably gonna be staring at the side of my head. Apologize for that in advance. But yeah, so welcome to the Solar and Electric Vehicle or EV Charger Co-op information session. We've got about an hour. We'll be here for about an hour. We'll certainly have time for Q&A, and Sakrit is monitoring the chat. And so we'll be dropping resources in the chat, and also feel free to drop questions in the chat at any time. Just a little bit of housekeeping items. Again, submit stuff in the chat, and wanted to let you know it's being recorded. This is being recorded, so we'll send that out probably tomorrow, a recording of this information session. And so if you need to go back and review it, or you have a family member or friend that wasn't able to attend and would like to view it, you will have access to that. Again, probably tomorrow in your inbox at some point. So what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a vendor neutral 501c3 nonprofit. So we're not affiliated with any solar company or any solar technology. We're not here selling solar. We're really a nonprofit organization that is here to be an advocate for you and help you and your community and your neighbors go solar and have a good experience, go solar, and become a smart solar consumer. We are a national nonprofit organization. We've got programs in about 12 states. We also help folks nationwide through our national help desk in DC and elsewhere with any questions about how to go solar. And we bring folks together to address barriers to information, red tape, technology, policy, and so much more. And we really strive to represent solar owners and solar consumers as well as prospective solar consumers. We got our start pretty organically, actually, in 2007. That's our founder and current and still executive director, Anya Schoolman, there in the middle. Her son Walter on the left, and friend Diego on the right. Came home one day in 2007 and said, "Mom, we have to go solar." Anya had them enlist the help of their neighbors to untangle the complicated process of going solar in Washington, D.C. Back in 2007. At that point, there was only 2 companies installing solar, and they heard different things about, what the panels will produce, what the permits are, what the cost is. And so they decided to form a loose-knit buying group, which is what we kind of are here today. And ultimately, after 2 years, 50 people in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Washington, D.C. went solar. That elicited some media attention, and Anya started getting calls from folks around Washington, D.C. and around the country that wanted to do things similar. And so just organically that started to spread. And obviously being in Washington, D.C., the first place it spread to was Virginia and Maryland and Northern Virginia, especially, and really the D.C., the capital area. It's been going on since at least 2014. We've been doing these bulk buying groups. Now, again, we're in 2022. We have members in 50 states. We've run well over 300 solar co-ops. We've got just about 50 staff across 5 time zones now. We've recently added Puerto Rico, and so have all 4 time zones in the contiguous U.S. And then the Atlantic time zone in Puerto Rico as well. And we're even dabbling a little bit in Hawaii. So a great start to Solar United Neighbors over the last 15 years. So for our impact, as I mentioned, we're on the ground in 12 states. We've helped over 6,000 families go solar nationally, installing 54 megawatts, which is about a utility scale size solar power plant on individual rooftops across the country. In Virginia specifically, we've helped over 1,100 families go solar, 8 megawatts out of that 54. We also work on policies at the General Assembly here in Richmond, the State Corporation Commission, which is the regulatory body, local municipalities and various commissions to expand solar rights and access and increase solar deployment. We're also working towards an equitable system. We know that rooftop solar lets communities invest locally, creates good local jobs, and brings control of the energy system within our reach. And we're working towards a new energy system that everyone can participate in, one that is fair and equitable. Our theory of change here, or really our organizational vision. First and foremost, we help folks go solar. That's one of the things we're doing today. We help support new and existing solar installations, help work with installers, and again, technology neutral. Additionally, we help people join together and really build a community of solar ambassadors and solar champions across the Commonwealth and across the country. We have resources and an email listserv and social events. We have a Facebook page and an email listserv. I'll have Sakrit drop those in the chat. Those are great places that you can go and post a question. And there's over 1,000 folks in Virginia that most of whom have solar on their house, and they'll tell you their experience. And certainly a lot of those are in the Northern Virginia region. We also, join together with happy hours and other types of events. We used to do an annual meeting called the Solar Congress, although COVID kind of stopped that, and I guess we haven't quite started that back up again. And then additionally, we help fight for energy rights, right? As we get our solar army together. We are a nonpartisan organization. We know that solar energy is free, and that a government or a monopoly utility company should not restrict your access to it. And so we go to the General Assembly and elsewhere to help fight for energy rights. And as more laws are passed, more people then have access to go solar, and then that cycle continues. So a couple of things that we'll cover today. First, how the solar co-op works. We'll also talk about technology, right? Solar panels, batteries, EV chargers. And then we'll talk about the economics and finances of going solar. So what is a solar co-op? First and foremost, it's a voluntary buying group that leverages its size to get a discount on the prices. It's really the best value on installation for solar today. Our job is to give you the tools to make an informed decision. It's not my decision or Chris' decision or Helen's decision. If you ultimately end up going solar, that's up to you. But we want you, again, to be a smart consumer and give you the tools to help make the best decision for you and your household. We're here to support you throughout the process. We'll even review proposals for you that you get outside of the co-op. Happy to help you in any way that you need to go solar. Connect you with fellow solar enthusiasts. As we mentioned, we actually had a kind of a happy hour reception in Arlington back in May. That was great to see everyone. Traditionally, at the end of the co-op, we have a happy hour or a barbecue in somebody's yard or something like that. So this co-op will end up finishing up probably right before the winter time, and so it might be springtime next year before we do something like that. It is important to note the group has a beginning and an end, and it's a limited time to get co-op pricing. These prices and this co-op does not continue on in perpetuity. And most importantly, right now, to join the co-op, and at any point there is no obligation. You're not obligated to go solar. It doesn't cost anything to join the co-op. It's really just kind of putting your name in the hopper, so to speak, so that you have access to the discount prices. And we do have a co-op guide, and I'll have Sakrit drop that in the chat if you want to go through that at another time. And then as far as the kind of the timeline of the solar co-op process, really important to note, this is a stakeholder-driven process, and we really encourage you to participate in it. Learning is a really big part of the process. And so kind of in the early stages, what you can do is, number one, attend a solar co-op information session. That's what we're doing right now. Signing up to become a member of the co-op. If you've not done so, certainly encourage you to do so. And spreading the word, invite your friends and neighbors. It is important to note this co-op closes on August 31st. So that is a week from tomorrow. It's been open since April or early May. As Helen mentioned, we've got about 350 folks in the group, so it's going gangbusters, but it will be coming to a close here just in 8 days or so. Selecting the installer, that's again something that happened in April or May. We had a selection committee comprised of I can't remember, it must have been 6 or 8, maybe 10 folks that are co-op members that want to spend a few hours on a weeknight from the comfort of their own home, digging through the various proposals. We got a handful of bids. We put out an RFP and got a handful of bids from local solar installers. And we went through that with a fine-tooth comb. And ultimately, the group ended up selecting SEW. Actually, I think there was 13 or 15 folks on that call, as I recall. SEW is the installer for the co-op. And there's a variety of kind of menu options that folks are able to access. And then now into months 4 and 8, where the sign-up deadline, as I mentioned, is next week. So certainly encourage you to kind of just get in the hopper before August 31st, because after that it will close and you'll no longer be able to join the co-op. Once you've joined the co-op, we'll screen your roof. That's the first thing we do to kind of check your roof, make sure it works for solar. And then we'll pass your information on to SEW. We'll certainly send you emails to kind of help inform you of the process. And then SEW, who has more advanced technology, software technology, will do a really thorough review of your roof to talk about the expected production and efficiency and panel placement and all that sort of stuff. And they'll give you a customized proposal, and they'll reach out and speak with you and try to figure out, which panels you want, which inverters you want, and we'll go over all that sort of stuff here before too long. But they'll customize that proposal for you with the solar co-op member pricing. Once you get the proposal, you'll have 30 days to sign the contract, and after those 30 days, those prices no longer are valid, or certainly SEW reserves the right to kind of pull that contract. So you have 30 days after you've received your proposal to make a decision. Again, we're here to help, here to talk you through it, help figure out financing and that sort of stuff as well if you need, have questions or thoughts about that. And then ultimately sign the contract. Ideally, probably be another 3 to 6 months for installation. after that point. And so certainly no guarantee that the installation will happen this year, this calendar year. I know folks that were getting signed up by July, that signed contracts by July, were guaranteed to get installed in 2022. But obviously, a contract wouldn't be signed at this point until September at the earliest. So, but once the installations happen, again, should be closing those out in the winter sometime. As I mentioned, we'll have a party probably in the spring again or something like that. All right. Any questions on how the co-op works? Again, feel free to post the questions in the chat at any point. I'm just going to keep on rolling, but Sukrit can answer a lot of questions in the chat if need be. So now we'll move on to solar technology. Just want to get a kind of base level understanding of solar technology. First and foremost, how do solar panels work? We're talking about solar photovoltaic or PV, which converts solar energy to electricity. There's other types of solar technology. You might be familiar with a solar thermal hot water heater that's used for heating water, often for a pool or something like that. That's not what we're working on or what we're talking about today. So we're talking about solar photovoltaic, or often referred to as PV. You can see how the panels are comprised of the various materials on the left. The photo on the right is what a ground-mounted solar array looks like. On the left, I think the important thing to note is the solar cells, which are what help generate the electricity. They're really well protected, right, from glass and frames on the front and the back. Traditionally, panels have been about 3 feet by 5 feet. Some now are about 4 by 6 feet. And they can be about 40 pounds or so, although that's, that can fluctuate a little bit here and there. And very important thing to note about panels is they are measured in wattage. And so when you talk about a panel, you'll talk about how many watts it has. And panels generate electricity into direct current or DC electricities. And so that'll be important later on as well. All right, as I mentioned, panels are measured in watts, short abbreviated W. When you have multiple panels together, you'll get up to kilowatts, which is just 1,000 watts is 1 kilowatt. Similar to like a light bulb or anything else, but obviously these are much larger in terms of wattage. And so when you're talking about panels, it'll be measured, I have a 300 watt panel or a 400 watt panel. But when you're talking about your whole system, the solar array or the solar system that's on your roof or in your yard, that'll be measured in kilowatts or kW. And so your system might be 5 kilowatts or 8 kilowatts or 10.2 kilowatts or something like that. And it's important to note that a 10 kilowatt system, for example, can power more things at one time than a 5 kilowatt system. However, that assumes that it's generating electricity at its kind of peak production, right? So sun's in the sky, no clouds, high noon, whatnot. A 10 kW system is going to be able to power more things than a 5 kW system, just naturally, right? But when the sun's not shining or anything like that, it's not really going to make a difference. So again, this assumes kind of peak production. Another important to note is kilowatt hours or kWh. And this is what your electricity is measured in. It's most basically how many kilowatts you're using over a period of time, right? So over an hour. And that's how you're billed in. So when you look at your electricity bill from Dominion or your utility, it's going to say, use 1,000 kWh or 1,000 kilowatt hours in a month. And that's important to know because, again, that's just a measure of the production over a period of time. We have an average size can be somewhere between 6 and 7 kW. It's important to kind of, understand that each household is going to be different on what they can do. Some folks have a budget that allows them to put a large system on that's going to cover just about all their electricity needs. At my house, I have a 5 kW system, 5.1 kW system. It does not cover all of my needs. I have a couple kids and an old house that has poor insulation and things like that. But it covers about 2/3 of my needs, which is really great. It really reduces my electricity bills. And that's what worked for me and my family. Another thing to illustrate in this illustration right here is why we talk about the system size in kW versus in panels as an example, right? So this is we've got 12 panels here, and you could have 300 watt panels at its most basic. So 12 times 300 is 3.6 kW. So it's 12 panels, 300 watt panels, a 3.6 kW system. Again, the 3.6 kW system is the important thing to note. Alternatively, you could have 400 watt panels, and both of those exist, 300 and 400 watt. So if you had 400 watt panels and you had 9 of them, that also would be 3.6 kW. So doesn't matter whether it's 9 panels or 12 panels, that's not the important thing. It's with the size of the system, 3.6 kW. It is important in terms of the number of panels when you're talking about how many panels will fit on my roof, right? If you're in a row house in Arlington, you might only be able to fit 9 panels as an example. And you might go, well, if I only got 9 panels, I want to get the 400s because that'll get me a larger system. Whereas if you're in a larger home, you know, out farther removed from the city center, and you've got tons of space, whether it's 9 panels, 12 panels doesn't make a difference to you. And so you might choose a different option. So just again, important to note that ultimately your system size is measured in kW rather than measured in number of panels or something like that. In addition to panels, a very important part of your system is an inverter. It's kind of like the brains of your system, a little bit of a computer that's underneath your solar panels. The string inverter is probably not something that folks are really going to be using much. That's mostly used on commercial stuff and on ground mounts if you happen to use that. What most folks in the co-op will be doing is one of the 2 photos on the right, either a string inverter with DC optimizer or a micro inverter. And the most important thing to know about the inverter is it converts the energy from DC, direct current, as we mentioned, the panels create electricity in DC, and the inverter converts it to AC, or alternating current. And this is how electricity is used in your home. So the inverters really condition that energy for use in your home. I think in this co-op, we have both types of inverters available. The SEW installer will go over the various different costs and the benefits of the 2 different inverters. Again, it's really the brains of your system. It helps monitor production. It can tell if production goes down. You'll get an app on your phone that allows you to kind of view the production of your solar system throughout the day. And that's one of your new favorite toys, is really checking the production of your system. Can be really fun. So the inverters will tell you all that sort of good stuff. And then once you figure out your panels and your inverters, you need to figure out how you're going to attach it to a roof. And that's where you're going to get a racking system, most likely. And often it depends on what type of roof you have. This is an asphalt shingle roof, which is the most common type we have here in Virginia. It's just a standard roof racking system. Nothing too complex about it. Other types of good roofs for solar are a standing seam metal roof. They actually clip onto those standing seams. And a rubber membrane roof can also be good for solar. One thing to note is slate as a roof type is not really great for solar. Many installers do not work on slate, and the few that do will certainly give you an upcharge because it's a very delicate install and just requires a lot more time, a lot more labor to work on slate roofs. So it can be a challenge to install solar on a slate roof. Finally, once you get your panels and inverters affixed to your roof via rack, the installer will run some electrical into your home electrical panel. And so it's really a simple connection into your electrical panel. Most homes do not need electrical system upgrades. Although it's important to note, the installer, one of the first things they're going to ask from you is a photo of your electrical panel. So don't think that is weird or strange or anything like that. That's really the installer getting a sense on how old your panel is and if you have space for the breaker that's going to be required. If by some reason your panel's full, certainly you can get a sub panel or something like that, and the installer will work with you on that. And I think there's now potentially some tax credits out of some of the new legislation coming out of DC about that. So not usually a big deal if you need to upgrade your panels some capacity. But again, don't be alarmed if the installer is asking you for a photo of your electrical panel. And in order to have a solar array on your roof, you do need to have a roof that's good for solar. This is a bit more of an art than a science, but how to determine a good roof for solar. First and foremost, you want to look at the orientation, the direction that the roof faces. We're in the northern hemisphere, so in an ideal scenario, your roof will face south, right? Face the equator. Although west and east also work as well. North is usually not a recommended direction to face for solar generation, although it can work certainly if that's just might decrease your production a bit. Additionally, you want to have little or no shading, especially during those peak generation hours between like 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So if you've got a big tree or a building or anything like that that's really shading your roof during the day, that would make that roof face not really ideal for solar. You want to have enough space to mount the panels. We usually recommend at least 200 square feet of usable space. So that's not just total space, that's usable space. If you have dormers and gables and other things like that, that'll make it a little bit harder. Panels they're a certain size and only fit in certain spots. There's fire codes and other regulations that need to be followed, and so that there's a room for firefighters, etc., to access the roof. For a fire not caused by the solar panels, just in general. And so you can't use every square inch of your roof, is my point, for solar panels. And so it's great to have some additional space up there as well. And then finally, you want to have a newer roof, not a new roof, not necessary, but a roof that's kind of still in the early stages of its life expectancy. It doesn't have any major damage. We recommend at a minimum 10 years of roof life remaining, because a big cost of solar is in the labor. And so if you need a new roof, let's say in 3 to 5 years, and you put a solar system on your roof, to pay somebody to go up there and pull it off so you can get a new roof, store it while you're getting that new roof, and then put it back on, is going to be fairly costly. And so it's kind of recommended if you do need a new roof, in the next few years, it's probably good to go ahead and do that new roof before you get the solar installation on your roof. If your roof doesn't work for you, it's not a good fit, you have slate or shading or whatnot, a ground mounted system is a great option. Obviously the key to this is you have to have the space. And again, in inner Arlington, that might be a challenge, but if you're outside the Beltway or something like that, you might have a bit more room, and a ground mounted system can be a really good option. Some of the positives of benefits of a ground mounted system is they can be more efficiently oriented to the sun, right? You're not going to be able to change the direction your roof faces, but you potentially could change the direction that the ground mounted system faces. And so that'll just increase the production, the productivity of the solar panels, make them more efficient. However, the cost is higher because you need to build that racking system, right? So that's just more materials, whereas on a roof, the roof is already there. So building the racking system is more in labor and in materials. Plus, you're going to need to run wire to your meter. And that's just, again, more labor and materials. Ideally, you don't want to run it more than 50 to 100 feet to a meter, because the cost of trenching, of putting the electrical wires in the ground can get really expensive if you're getting really far from your meter. But again, can increase the productivity, but also increases the cost of it. Some frequently asked questions we get about solar arrays. What about warranties? Typically, the panels have a 25-year production warranty. They're going to maintain a solid efficiency. And solar panels have no moving parts. And so there's no motors or anything. So not a lot that can fail or degrade. So really the life expectancy of your solar system should be 25 years at least. Also, panels usually have a manufacturer defect. That would be something that doesn't affect its production, maybe a piece of metal hanging off the side or whatnot. Different manufacturers, different warranties, usually 10 to 25 years. And the inverters also usually have 10 to 25-year warranty. And then a workmanship warranty from the installer. Usually you're going to see about 3 to 10 years. That might be on the roof penetration or something like that. Although the good news is, if something's going to go wrong with your solar installation, it's usually going to happen pretty much right away. Homeowners insurance, you absolutely should call your homeowners insurance. The solar array becomes part of your home and is covered by your homeowners insurance. So most insurance companies nowadays are very familiar with solar systems and have no concerns with that. Your premium should either not go up or go up really nominally. There is one national insurance company who increases prices pretty significantly, and if that's the case for you, we do encourage you to shop around, because that's not really the industry standard to significantly increase homeowners insurance. Maintenance, these things are really maintenance free. You don't need to go up there and clear snow off your panels. We get enough rain to clean the panels. They're really hail resistant. Again, I mentioned earlier the app on your phone with the online monitoring. We do not want you getting up on your roof and trying to deal with these panels. You shouldn't have to do much, but if you do, all the installers, they have a service department as well. And so you really shouldn't have to do much. HOAs, will HOAs allow solar on my home? Well, the good news is, part of our fighting for energy rights here at Solar United Neighbors, we've actually passed legislation statewide at the General Assembly to make it more difficult for HOAs to prohibit or outlaw solar, and more difficult to put on unreasonable restrictions on your solar. So they can't just ban it outright, provided it's not in the covenant, and they can't ask you to move it from the front to the back if that's going to significantly increase the cost or significantly reduce the production. And so again, part of our nonprofit advocacy of fighting for energy rights helped make that possible back in 2020. And if you have questions specifically about that, you can certainly reach out to us, and we're happy to try to steer you in the right direction. If you're in a historic district like Alexandria or Arlington or something like that, we certainly encourage you to reach out to SEW, the installer. They've been working in this area a long time, and they're very familiar with the permitting office, and would be able to answer your specific questions about what to do in a historic district. All right, so just a quick recap on some of the important terminology that we're rolling through here. Number one, you can see, is the solar array, solar panels. Number two is the inverter. And then the electricity flows through the inverter, because that converts it from DC to AC electricity, and then it flows into your electrical panel. And your house has the right of first refusal kind of on all that electricity produced by your solar array. So you can see it powering the light bulb in this illustration right here. And if there's additional surplus electricity, if your solar array is generating more electricity than your house needs at any one moment, the extra energy will flow through your utility meter and onto the grid, right? And that is called net metering, and we're going to get into that right now. And so a little kind of deeper dive into net metering is there's electrons more or less pushing from your solar panels and from the grid simultaneously on your house. And as I mentioned, the first thing that your electrical panel, your home, is going to give right of first refusal to your solar electricity. So everything will be powered by solar energy created on site as much as possible. And then anything that's needed, maybe a cloud rolls by, or it's getting to be nighttime or dusk, what have you, the grid will backfill any kind of remaining needs, energy needs, electricity needs, so that kind of, again, at every instant you are getting the exact amount of electricity you need. When the sun is shining, maybe you're not home during the day, and you're getting some really good sunshine, so not really using that much electricity. As I mentioned, you might push electrons onto the grid through your meter, and this is where the net metering is called or explained. And so during the day, as an example, you might be pushing electrons onto the grid, and then at night you'll be pulling electrons off the grid. and that would then power your home at that point. And so you kind of can view that, it's almost like rollover minutes, right? How many do you have at the end of the day, right? During sunshine, put it on the grid. At nighttime or on a rainy day, pulling it off a grid. Well, what's the total the difference that I end up using? And really, they view that on a monthly basis and actually on an annual basis. But this is why you don't have to go all or nothing. You don't have to power all of your home from solar energy, right? You can power 50% of your home from solar energy, 50% of your home from the grid, and still reduce your bills by a significant amount. Kind of a more mathematical explanation of how net metering works. Important to note, the credit is 1-to-1. So for every electron you put onto the grid during sunshine generation, solar energy being put onto the grid, you're going to get a credit from Dominion or your utility that is the same value as the electrons you're pulling off the grid at night or on a rainy day. So it's a 1-to-1 swap. It's going to be different every day and certainly every season. In the spring and the fall, when you're not really using your HVAC as much, you'll probably be potentially putting more solar onto the grid. Whereas in the summer and the winter, when you're using your AC and if you have electric heat, be putting less onto the grid. The HVAC units are probably your biggest electricity hogs that you have at your house, unless maybe you're plugging in an electric car as well. And that's why you'll see again in the spring and the fall, and those kind of really nice, not too hot but not too cold, kind of the Goldilocks days are the best ones for solar and for net metering, because your electricity use is low compared to the summer, as an example, when you're cranking that AC, and then you're putting an increased surplus of electrons onto the grid, and really kind of building up those credits that then you can pull down later in the year. And it's based on an annual cycle, right? So each month you'll get a bill from Dominion or your utility, kind of explaining how many credits you have. But it might be that you're building them up in the spring and then using them in the summer, and building them at the fall and use them in the winter. Once you get to that end of that 12-month cycle, you do kind of reset. It's possible that you could sell it to Dominion for pennies on the dollar. It's a really complicated process. Dominion doesn't like that. They don't want you to have excess credits at the end of a 12-month period, and so really don't want you to kind of oversize your system with the goal of having a surplus at the end of 12 months. But if you have a surplus in March and April, and you dwindle that surplus in July and August, that's totally fine, just not at the end of a 12-month cycle. It's also important to note the 12-month cycle is not going to be January 1st. It's actually based off whatever day the installation occurred at your home, or when you actually got permission to operate, when Dominion kind of flipped the switch and said you are good to go for net metering. So for me, it's in November. For you, as part of this co-op, it might be in February or March or something. It doesn't really matter what the day is. It's just important to note it's not January 1st, unless that's the day that you actually got your system up and running. But due to it being a federal holiday, probably not going to happen. I see a question in the chat. Has the co-op used the same installer? Have any installers been bought or went out of business? That's a great question. Sorry, pivoting from net metering just 1 second. Let me finish up net metering and then we'll get into that. So net meter is a really critical tool for rooftop solar. It's a fair credit. We do have a net metering energy guide, and I think Sakrit has already put that into the chat. Here's just a kind of an example of what net metering can do to your bill. These numbers are really generic, probably not what your bill is going to look like, but let's say you consume 300 kilowatt hours of electricity in a month. Your solar array produces 250 kilowatt hours. Doesn't matter if that solar energy was used at your home or put on the grid, makes no difference. Your solar array produced 250 kilowatt hours. You're gonna the net difference is 50 kilowatt hours, and so you're going to pay only for 50 kilowatt hours, whereas previously you would have been paying for 300 kilowatt hours. And this is important to note because when we talk about how systems pay themselves back, part of the savings and part of the kind of the ROI on your system is based on your monthly savings on your electricity bill. In addition, there are some fixed connection charges. In Dominion Terra, it's $6.58 plus tax. So even if you had 100% solar energy in 1 month, you would still have a bill of about $7 or $8 a month, and that's just a fixed connection charge. As I mentioned, the surpluses carry over month to month for an annual year, 12 months, and it's based on your interconnection date, not on January 1. All right, so I see the chat's been going a little bit more, finished up that net metering. Battery storage, hey, great question. So we're getting into that next. So power outages and batteries, what happens when the power goes out? This is really important because it's pretty counterintuitive. When the power goes out, when the grid goes out, I should say, your solar panels will stop working automatically. The inverters are constantly talking to the grid and they will shut down. And the reason they do that is for a safety mechanism, right? As we discussed, your solar panels can feed electricity onto the grid. They're doing that every day, right? If you've got somebody working on the line, right? Somebody from Dominion trying to fix the power outage on the line, and your solar panels are feeding electricity onto the line, it's a major safety hazard. Somebody would get injured or killed. And so we certainly don't want that to happen. And so that's what the inverters, again, simultaneously or instantaneously, I should say, will shut down your solar generation when they detect an outage on the grid. And once they detect that the grid has been resolved, the outage has been resolved, they will begin to produce again, just like normal. And so, again, important to note, you will not have solar electricity when the grid goes out. However, if you do want to have access to the grid or access to your solar panels when the grid goes out, the way you can do that is via batteries, right? And so what you end up doing in essence is you would have your batteries on site at your house and your solar panels, and they would have kind of a closed loop circuit. We call it islanding. Your power would be islanding. So just running between the panels and the batteries and kind of would shut off from the grid at that time. You might need to flip a switch. Certainly you should not expect your entire house to be powered by batteries. There's just too much of a load, especially the HVAC. As I mentioned, those are really big, really big power sucks. We're starting just barely to the very beginning stages of figuring out car vehicle to grid or vehicle to home power generation. You might have seen the Ford F-150 Lightning, which can do this kind of stuff, and some other things. It's very early stages of all that, but potentially in the years to come, your electric vehicle might be able to help power your home during an outage, complementing with batteries. But again, the important thing to know, if you do want to have access to power during an outage, you're going to need to have batteries. Those in essence serve as a reserve for the solar electricity that's generated during the day. But again, it's more than likely not going to be significant enough to power everything in your house. You might be able to power your coffee maker, your Wi-Fi, your fridge, a few lights, a few fans, a couple outlets, but don't expect it to power your air conditioner or charge your EV. And then just in this graph right here, you can see that the major events since 2017 has really increased in terms of power outages. And so some of the value on battery storage, right now, it doesn't make a ton of sense financially to get batteries. First of all, the supply chain is really backed up. Batteries are competing with electric vehicles and other things for those critical minerals. The cost is very high for batteries, probably just about double the cost, maybe more for your whole installation if you wanted to add batteries. So it doesn't make sense financially for a lot of folks, but for a few folks, it does make sense. And that can be if you just got a ton of utility outages at your house. Batteries might be an example. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting to do work in Puerto Rico, which the grid has constant outages down there, and battery systems are really valuable. And so folks are doing them. If you have a critical load at your house, like a well pump, right? You need well water or medical equipment that you simply can't live without. Well, then the financial equation changes for you, and batteries might be a good option. Also, if you work in emergency or disaster preparedness, right? Like you've got to work during an outage, you're part of the emergency network. Batteries could be a good thing for you. But again, they're really expensive at the moment. In the complexity of them, there's just more things that can fail, and it's complex. So not to say you can't get batteries, but it's a bit challenging and very costly at the moment. If you want to learn more about batteries, we've got a whole web page developed on batteries. I think we've got an hour-long webinar simply on batteries. So you can certainly take a deep dive into batteries if you wanted to know more. So with that, I will pause for questions, or at least ask Sakrit if there's anything in the chat that I need to cover, or it looks like you've been covering things a bit.
Hey Ben, so just a couple of questions. One of them is financing related. So I will save that for the end simply because we are actually transitioning into the costs and all that stuff in the next segment. So we can save that for the end. But the only question I did not have a complete answer to was, is battery storage an alternative for net metering? And my understanding is you would need a really big system for that to even come into effect, simply because any electricity that the battery backup is storing or what have you, it will be instantaneously consumed by the household. But do you have a better answer than that?
Yeah, and I'm not totally sure I understand the question, so I'll put a couple possibilities out there. I mean, battery, an alternative to net metering. Maybe not an alternative, maybe a complement to net metering, right? So there are some programs. Dominion has a time of use pilot project where you can pay a different rate based on the time of day, right? It's cheaper to use electricity from midnight to 6 a.m. as an example. It's more expensive to use it from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Because that's when electricity load is really high. They have a pilot. I believe it's full. I think they got about 10,000 folks signed up. And that would be the kind of thing where if you had batteries, right, and from 3 to 7 p.m. as an example, you would potentially use your solar panels and your batteries at that time to kind of try to solely use those to consume and not pull anything off the grid. And then potentially from midnight to 6 a.m., you would then pull electricity off the grid to both power your home, but also refill your batteries, right? And that's obviously a lot more complicated. You've got to be really into a lot of things. You've got to have appliances that are going to wait until 7 p.m. or 10 p.m. Your entire house has to be supportive of it, because it doesn't work if you do it, but your kids don't. So there's things moving in that direction, again, just from the pilot kind of project phase of those type of things. I mean, the other kind of alternative to net metering is just disconnecting from the grid, which is really uncommon. As I mentioned, unless you had a giant system, you likely wouldn't be able to power everything at your home. The only folks we see disconnected from the grid are really kind of out in the mountains or a really rural area, where they might have a cabin or something like that, and they just kind of have power on that power. But it's practically camping, in a structure at some point. And so, but yeah, probably the time of use pilot project from Dominion and others are starting to look at that. And maybe they'll open up more slots at some point. So, but it's complicated and it takes everybody in the house to be on board with it, but can be done.
Great, thanks, Ben. And one more question just came through, and it has to do with, so Michael asked, I don't see an SEW in the list of prior installers. Any thoughts with going with a new installer this year? Risks, reasons? I'm sure the co-op team had many considerations. So I can get started on answering this. So SEW, yeah, it's their first time serving a co-op in Arlington in Virginia. Having said that, I also work with the DC team in Maryland. So we're also running co-ops over there. SEW has worked with us in previous years in Maryland. They served 3 previous co-ops over there. If you go to their co-op page, you'll find them. And as Ben said, we do not pick the installer. We have that RFP or that bidding process. And this year, I believe we had 14 or 15 people in the selection committee. That committee is made up of co-op members who voluntarily attend that committee, and they picked SEW. And when it comes to risks and all that stuff, we actually do a rigorous vetting process. So when we receive these bids, we check out the installer, look at the ratings online, look for any potential lawsuits that they might be involved in, look for any red flags. Once that is done, we'll check out the references that they're provided just to see if everything checks out. So we do our own vetting process when it comes to these installers. So when there are new installers bidding on the co-op, the only risk is you don't really know them, but our vetting process more than covers that. But if you have more questions about how the process was, reach out to us at vateam@solarunitedneighbors.org, and we'll be happy to explain the process. But I think that covers everything. Ben, you want to answer anything, or add anything I may have missed?
Yeah, just to reiterate, Sakir mentioned, so SCW's done the one in Montgomery and Prince George's County multiple years, so they're certainly familiar with the area. And then just like anything, I mean, often what we see with bidders and companies is as they kind of get more busy. Some companies don't want to grow more, and they're kind of like to be small or smaller, and they're busy. And solar installers right now are super busy. We're kind of fortunate that we got these prices locked in April. Installers are incredibly busy at the moment. And so, each year we kind of get a different group of installers that bid. I think Lumina did the install last year, and they're busy enough where they didn't need to offer discounts, and so chose not to bid this year. Plus, there was some Federal Trade Commission kind of stuff happening in the springtime when the bids were going on, and so they chose not to bid. But as Sakir mentioned, SCW has partnered with us in the Capital Region many times. And they won the bid this year, and all things are moving forward. We got about 100 installations last year, and we're hoping to get right around that again this year. So, but yeah, if you have more questions, happy to address those on down the line.
Oh, perfect. And
all right, so let's keep rolling. I know we're getting close to 1 o'clock. We'll try to roll through some of these final slides. We encourage you to install an EV charger as part of the co-op. We really look at solar as a local fuel. You can see when you pair solar with an EV charger for an electric vehicle, these numbers are really kind of broad and generic, but you can see from a gas-powered car, maybe it costs you $1,800 a year on gas, whereas with an EV, it cost you, there's 11 cents a kilowatt hour. That's actually electricity from the grid. That'd be $400 a year. But if you were supplying 100% solar energy, then it would in essence be free. You can do the EV portion only as part of the co-op, although you probably won't be SCW's priority, to be fairly honest. Certainly they're more interested in doing solar panels and solar panels plus EV chargers, but you certainly are allowed to do an EV charger by itself as part of the co-op. And in terms of the basics on an EV charger, this would be a level 2 charger. So there's generally 3 types of chargers: a level 1 charger, which is going to plug into a regular 110, 120 volt in your house, just a regular outlet. And that's a really slow charger. A level 2 charger is going to plug into a 240 volt outlet, similar to your dryer. So you might need to have that. You're probably going to need to have that added somewhere, that outlet. And that can charge up to kind of 6 times as fast as a standard outlet, usually between 10 and 30 miles an hour, depending on the battery. And the typical warranty is about 3 years. And so this would be a charger that's at your home for an electric vehicle that you have, again, a level 2 charger. So not a high speed, fast charging DC charger or anything like that, like you might see from some of those companies kind of on a highway or a gas station or Walmart or whatnot, but the common level 2 charger. Some installation considerations that you're going to want to consider, where you're going to put it. Is it going to be indoors, outdoors? What type of mounting do you have, a pedestal or a wall mount? You're going to want to make sure, again, that you have electric service accessible. And so this is space in your panel, just like you're going to need space in your electrical panel for your solar array. Network capability is really best practices, Wi-Fi, so that you can monitor charging and other things from your car from your phone. Make sure your cord's long enough to reach your car. Do you have access? Is it public access? Are you going to be going over city property or county property, anything like that? Those are all kind of important factors. And we already kind of went through the time of use pilot project. That's one that EV owners are often interested in as well. But again, I believe that filled up a while back. EV charger cost, usually it's kind of $500 to $700 for the unit, and then an install is $500 to $2,000, and much of the install cost depends on how far the charger is going to be installed away from your panel, right? Is it kind of really close to your electrical panel, or is they got to punch through 3 different walls and go 100 feet around the corner? That's obviously going to add more costs, right? And so a lot of it's made up of labor and materials. And so it can be, $1,000 if you're kind of doing a basic installation, or it can be several $1,000s. There was a tax credit in December 31st on EV chargers. We had heard that it might be resuscitated and added on this year. I think it was part of the Inflation Reduction Act, but I'm not totally positive on that. I think it might be another 30% of the install. So you can imagine, 30% off at tax time of the $1,000 to $2,700. That is, again, assumes you have a tax liability or tax credit. But we'll have more information on all that as Solar United Neighbors in the coming weeks and coming months. I think we have a webinar even on Friday about the Inflation Reduction Act. And then some of the economics. This is our last section. Important to note the costs of solar have dropped tremendously. You can see that in the graph since the 70s, and even since 2010, they've dropped about 73%. It is important to view solar as a long-term investment. No moving parts in a 25-year lifespan. This is not a two-year plan or 2-year payback or anything like that. One of the benefits it does, it hedges against rising utility rates. Traditionally, utility rates rise 2 to 3% a year. This year, I think Dominion announced they're going to increase cost by 9%, and that's based off the international cost of natural gas, right? So as natural gas due to Russia, Ukraine, etc., cost is increasing, those rates are going to, your utility rates are going to go up, I believe, again, 9% this year. Whereas if you have a solar array covering all of your system or even most of your system, you're really hedged against those rising utility costs from your electric utility. So the average return on investment, we calculated somewhere between 9 and 13 years. I think it's really closer to 8 to 10, again, especially as utility rates increase, that ROI is just going to pay off even faster. If you look at the cost of solar, you can see that the system components cost has gone way down since 2010. Although labor costs has gone down a bit, but it's held fairly steady, and soft costs as well. And where we come in and we provide value is on that soft cost, right? We really help bring down the soft costs for the installers, help educate folks, bring them a group of solar interested individuals and households, and that really helps the installer, and that's why we're able to get such good pricing. Here's an example price sheet, and there's a lot of numbers here, and I don't want you to get lost in the numbers. Really, I just want to kind of highlight some things so you can understand how your system pays you back. And when you get a proposal from SEW or any other installer, you'll be able to understand how your system pays you back. So we're going to look at the right-hand column, the 8 kW column, because that's, again, about the average system size that we have here in Virginia. You can see the solar co-op pricing. This is a standard slide. So the $275 a watt is not the exact price for the co-op, but I think it's generally right around there. So, $2.75 per watt times 8,000 watts, $22,000. There is a 30% federal tax credit that you would get in the spring or winter as you file your tax credit taxes. Important to note, it's a tax credit, not a refund. So you must have the tax liability. number one, and we're not accountants, so we encourage you to speak with your accountant. But you must have the tax liability. I believe if you don't have it all in 1 year, you can roll it over for up to 5 years. But important to note, so yeah, you would get that $6,600 off your taxes in in April or 2023 or whenever you file your taxes. That brings your net cost to $15,000, right? So those are the costs based on kind of the installation charges. And then the other ones get to be a bit more variable. They're based on estimated yearly electricity savings, which again, we take a conservative approach and look at 2 to 3% increase. As I mentioned, it might be going up by 9%. And it also depends on how much electricity you use. So the numbers are different for everyone. So 1 year electricity savings, $1,100. 10-year electricity savings, $11,700. Again, that factors in a slight increase in costs. That's why it's not a straight 1,100 times 10. And then an annual savings or a 25-year savings, a lifetime savings of over $32,000 in just an electricity cost. And then additionally, there's solar renewable energy credits, which are in essence these vouchers that you can actually take to the market and trade for value. In essence, you will become a renewable energy producer in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And there are folks that want to kind of take credit for that production. That could be Dominion, they need to satisfy state law. That could be Amazon or Google or someone else that wants to say it powered all of its data centers or all of its warehouses in Virginia with renewable energy generated in Virginia. You are generating renewable energy in Virginia, so you can kind of sell those credits in the market and get some money for that. And usually they sell, I think right now they're selling for like $40 or $50 a credit. And those are based off production. I think it's 1,000 megawatt hours of production. So an 8 kW system might have, in general, let's say 10 credits a year, $40, $50, maybe it's $500 a year, and it's a nice thing to have. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but $500 a year times 10 years times 25 years can become a good amount of money, and that'll help pay the system back as well. And so again, in this chart, we have kind of the net profit after 25 years of being $26,000. Important to note, these are turnkey numbers. It's not like buying a car where this is the price and you got all these fees and this and that and the other. This is permits are done, installs done, turnkey system. You write one check to the installer for $22,000 if you're getting an 8 kW system. This is the cash price, right? We're financing the payoff. The payback is obviously takes a bit longer because you're going to have to finance the system. Federal tax credit. This is a slide that I just updated this morning because this is new information is no longer decreasing. As of a couple weeks ago, the tax credit was 26% this year, going to go down to 22% in next year, and then go down to 0% in 2024. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. That is no longer true. It is 30% now, 30% next year, and 30% for the next 10 years. And so this is based off installation dates. So again, if your system is not installed till January, February, March of next year, previously you would have been looking at a 4% decrease because it's not based on when you sign a contract or anything like that. It's based on when your system is actually put on your roof or on your property. But good news is it's 30% for the next 10 years. And that's another thing that's led to installers being busy, right? The tax credits have increased. And so folks are really busy, but we got these prices locked in before this happened. And so the prices that we have locked in right now are probably not going to be available on the open market anytime soon. So certainly encourage you to join the co-op and take advantage of these limited time price offers. If you are going to finance, that's certainly an option. As I mentioned, the return on investment takes a bit longer. Officer Crit drop our financing guide in the chat if he has not already done so. Some of the common ways to finance a system would be a home equity line of credit. Refinance includes solar. There's other various loan types. The installer likely has financing through their own financing company. And then there's a couple of credit unions that specialize in in renewable energy system solar install. So the Clean Energy Credit Union and Community First Credit Union solar co-op members, Solar United Neighbors members, of which you would be, would have access to those. And those are pretty competitive rates from credit unions that are specifically here to fund, electric vehicles and solar panels and that sort of stuff. I know I just ran through a whole bunch. Did want to pause for questions, or I know the chat's been going. Sakrit, is there anything else I need to cover in the chat?
I do not see anything. The last question was on EV chargers. That's been covered, so no questions.
Great. One final note on financing, just like anything, encourage you to shop around, right? If you are interested in financing, try to get a couple different bids. We do hear stories, horror stories, not from SEW or from our co-ops, but from folks kind of out in the street that don't come to these things, that somehow get into these long-term loans at kind of predatory rates. And so encourage folks to shop around and get a couple of offers. It's just like anything else. When you're going to have a big purchase, you should do your homework, get a couple proposals and make sure that you're getting the best deal possible for you and your family. So what to do next? Again, we want you to be a smart consumer. We encourage you to join the co-op. You got 8 days left, August 31st. It will close. You can stay tuned for updates. We've already passed the RFP phase, as mentioned. Be ready for the consultation and installation. Tell your friends and neighbors. You got one more weekend to do that. Join our Facebook page, our Virginia listserv. Reach out if you have any questions. We got a co-op in Hampton Roads as well. If you got friends in Williamsburg, Virginia Beach, Hampton, wherever, we're doing one of those, and that's going to go till about Halloween. So encourage you to let your friends and neighbors down there know that as well. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions. VA team at solarunitedneighbors.org is the way to reach Sakrit, myself, and a few other folks. We're thrilled that you took some time with us today, and thanks so much. And if you have any other questions, like I said, just email us, and we'll be sending out the recording of this probably tomorrow. And thanks to Helen and Arlington County for today and for being a great partner for so many years. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day.